fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it is the last week of Paranormal Supernatural Fiction Month over here on the podcast. So,
February.
Yay.
Normally you say the month so I can sing it.
Oh,
in the
I'm so
background.
sorry.
I keep waiting for you to say it this month, but every week you're like, it's the last week of, or the second to last week of Paranormal, and I'm like, February.
Sorry. I didn't realize we'd fallen into such a pattern. We don't have to keep doing that.
Well, otherwise I'm just sitting here silently for the first 10 minutes.
Anyway, to close things out for the month of February.
There
you go. I'm the straight man and Shireen's the funny one. I think we all know that.
It's like Pinky in the Brain.
It's true. We really know who's who as well. Anyway, to close things out for this month, we figured we would kind of talk about the evolution of paranormal and supernatural fiction, you know, kind of like where things started versus where we've gotten to, and maybe where we're headed. Hey, who knows, right?
That's interesting.
Well, you know, no, but I mean, in terms of like themes and things like that and how kind of different things have become in terms of like paranormal.
An abundance of paranormal.
Yes, true. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, before we get started with all of that, Shireen, what's on your nightstand?
All right, so I breezed through, what the fuck are they called? Fourth Wing and Iron. Then I had so much momentum and I didn't have a book hangover, so I read Cruel Prince by Holly Black.
Oh, yeah.
Which gets rave reviews. Everybody loves it. There's 6 novels in the series, I think now.
Oh, okay.
And side note, I have to do a shout out to my friend KP on this one. So I sent my friend a screenshot of the books that I was buying that were on sale from the local bookstore. And this was one of them. And she was like, oh, I've read Cruel Prince, but if you're buying Wicked King, which is the sequel to Cruel Prince, because again, this is a fantasy series, critically acclaimed. Everybody talks about it, you know.
I've seen it on a bunch of lists.
Yeah. I was like, well, I might as well buy the second one while they're all on sale. So KP buys the second one as well. And then I get halfway through Cruel Prince, or not even halfway through, and I'm like, this is a fucking slog.
Oh, really?
It is boring. I don't care about the characters. Ooh. I think it was written for an audience, if I were to think about it, maybe a 14-year-old girl would enjoy this. A first exposure at fantasy and kind of a lot of themes that you see in the Sarah Moss universe, kind of. So, but I wasn't expecting it, and so I found it boring as shit. And I couldn't get into the characters, but I had to keep going because I'm like, well, KP is now invested in buying the second one, and I bought the second one too. And so I finish it, and I'm like, okay, finished Cruel Prince, and she's like, so we're gonna start Wicked King. She's like, did you like Cruel Prince? I'm like, honestly, not that really much. No. And she's like, no, I hated it too. I'm like, so why would you buy this? Oh my gosh. So now we're both returning Wicked King because
oh my god,
it's really not something that we're gonna read.
Oh my god, you guys are so funny.
That's where we're at with that. What about you?
I don't know. I'm on a weird kick of hockey romances right now.
Okay, not what I expected.
So I've read 4.
You've read 4 hockey romance?
I read I think 2 that exist in, what's her name? Stephanie Archer's Vancouver Storm series.
Well, Icebreaker is one of them, right?
No, I read that a while ago, actually. But I did read Wildfire, which is the second one in that series, a couple of months ago. I read that one. It was pretty good. No, Stephanie Archer's, it's the Vancouver Storm series. It's fictional Vancouver hockey team, basically.
Would not have pegged you as somebody who would read
I don't.
That.
Listen, they're easy. I get through them in about 15 seconds because they're so easy to read.
That's so funny.
And when I'm just kind of I'm in the mood for some smut.
Hockey is where I'm going to go. That's your true Canadian.
I know. And I don't know anything about hockey as a Canadian, so it's pretty impressive. So yeah, I've read that one. And what is it? I read a couple by Elle Kennedy. Also has a whole big series of stuff where she's got a ton of hockey romances. She's pretty big in that sphere. So yeah, I've just been doing that I don't know. I had a little, I finished a book and then I had in between that and another one, I had a little slight slump where I was like, oh, I don't feel like picking up something intense to get into right now. And so I was just on Kindle Unlimited and I was like, yeah, sure, fuck it. I'll just read this.
You're so funny. Yeah. I think I might go for the Hades and Persephone book next.
Yeah, I had read the first one, or what is it, A Touch of Darkness?
Okay.
Which, because it's weird, she's got like a bunch of Hades stuff, and I can't tell what's supposed to be the beginning and what's not. Supposedly that one is as well, because that's Hades and Persephone, but there's also the Hades saga. Like, I don't know, I don't understand Scarlett St. Clair's publishing history. Somebody can explain it to me. Maybe maybe it's just me being an idiot and not looking at them closely enough. Yeah. But it's very confusing to me because there's like Hades and Persephone and also the Hades saga, and I'm like, what's the beginning of this?
Sorry, I didn't mean to be mean there. That was very funny. You're like, maybe I'm just being an idiot, and I'm like, yeah.
This is what I put up with here. So mean.
Yeah. Maybe you are.
No, it's fine. I make fun of Shireen more than she makes fun of me.
This is very much true.
It's okay. So it's okay. It's fine. I love you. Anyway, that's where we're at. I feel like we're hitting like midwinter weirdness right now, you and I.
Get ready for the next few episodes.
Oh, people. God. Yeah, we're going to be ridiculous for like at least another month. Anyway. Canada.
Canada.
Anyway, let's talk about paranormal fiction. Let's talk about kind of like the beginnings. We did kind of go into detail about this a little bit in the last episode where we were talking about sort of like, whether or not paranormal fiction is scary anymore, whether or not it needs to be. But I feel like we can get into maybe a little bit more detail now of kind of like the beginnings of everything versus like a much more modern lens being used for these types of stories. Because if you think of, I guess if I think of paranormal and I think of classics, like it's a ghost story. It is a creepy haunted house. People are, someone's visiting it and has to figure out like who the person who's haunting it is.
But I think in many of these novels, it wasn't even the who, it was more of like the what and the how to get rid of it,
Yeah, you definitely have to get rid of it.
Like we weren't too concerned about like who the ghost was. Like if you think of like Northanger Abbey or you think of like a lot of the gothic fiction, it's just a ghost.
Well, and
the ghost has to be
or if you
gone.
did find out who it was always like, oh, a woman scorned or who died on the property.
Or who died in childbirth.
Or the child who died on the property, possibly in some cases. Like there are always...
But there's not much of a characterization of them.
No, that's true. And they're not even despite the fact that it's normally like a fairly tragic beginning, they're not even seen as that sympathetic of a character, which always makes me feel kind of bad.
And, like, I always found that like quite a dichotomy because it's like, okay, so you're telling me that this woman was wronged and then died in childbirth on this property. Now she's haunting this new family with children, and we have no sympathy for her because she's only evil.
Yeah, that's what we don't feel bad about this.
Yeah,
okay.
Like we're not sad about this really sad story. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's very strange, but I feel it's true that used to be. But again, I think that goes back to generations of like misogyny and not really. Why would we, especially male authors, why would we have taken a look at female trauma and how that affects women because we didn't understand how anything affected women in like the 19th century, 18th and 19th century. There are definitely still some problems with that. But you know what I mean? Like just, the idea of like, well, no, it's just a woman is crazy and she's ridiculous and she overreacts to everything. And that was
we must send her away to the seaside haunted mansion so she can be with her spirits.
Or it either goes that way or it becomes like a lesbian period drama at that point.
What?
Like she goes there and then there's like a weird woman there and there's definitely sexual tension, but the author doesn't really get into it very much.
I'm gonna need an example here.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but people are gonna know what I'm talking about.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's it. It's true though. It's just sort of like, oh, leave her to her madness, and why would we try to help her? And that comes from even back like Shakespearean stuff, right? Everybody, Lady Macbeth goes crazy, Ophelia goes crazy, like Desdemona is murdered.
Desdemona
for no reason. I just all of these like characters, these female characters, being treated this way, and whether they're like real ghosts or fake ghosts. There's like a lot of that kind of stuff involved, and I feel like it used to really be like very straightforward in the sense that like this house is haunted and it really is haunted, it really was. Like, there was something haunting the property. But the more time goes on and the more we kind of, like, develop these stories, the more I think that writers began to look inward a little bit more and be like, oh, like, the house is haunted, but is it really? Or is it really just our own demons that are haunting us kind of thing? And, like, what does that mean? And oftentimes when you stay in the paranormal genre, it's a combination of both of those things.
Well, and that's where that evolution comes in, right? Yeah. Like, I think that the more time went on, instead of using the paranormal as an explanation for, occurrences, it became like the main story itself. We want to know about the ghost. We want to know what happened. And then beyond that,
Yeah, it's true. Because, now, like, the novels that are like this that do really well are like, yeah, this house is haunted, but so is the main character kind of thing, or the main character needs to work through something in order to get rid of the haunting in some way, shape, or form. And it's not just getting rid of the ghost, it's also, like, working through their own stuff. So if I think about even, like, I guess some of the more recent reads that I've had, like the September House, which I read last year, it really falls into that genre because, yes, the house is haunted and there are legitimately ghosts in the house, but the woman who is living there also needs to work through her own trauma with regards to her marriage and her life and the way that everything has turned out, in order for them to really be able to move forward with everything. She has to come to terms with what's happened in her own life as well, to be able to break free from the entities that are haunting her in her house that she lives in, kind of thing. So I feel like there's a lot more of that now. Yeah. Who else has done stuff like that? Riley Sager has, like, one or two that are kind of like that. What is it? The House Across the Lake. Oh, yeah. Has an element of that to it. Which was interesting. It wasn't something I was expecting when I originally read that story, but it's got, like, an element of that kind of thing to it where you have to work through your own problems as well. Well, we also went through, like, a period where, it was like, okay, using ghosts as an explanation for things happening. And then there was, like, this period of, we think it's a ghost, but we can prove that it's not a ghost. Oh, definitely. Yes, yeah. And now we're into, it's a ghost. And also I have problems. Yeah. And the ghost is going to help me with my problems or exacerbate said problems. Yeah, that's it. Or because this ghost exists, I need to work through my own problems kind of thing. Yeah, it's definitely become a lot more like, psychological, like actual relationships with the paranormal. Yes. Versus it being like an us versus them. It's like, hey, how do we work together and get through whatever's happening? Whatever has happened on both sides of the spectrum here for both the living and the dead, or like for both whatever entities exist or whatever it is. Yeah, no, it's true. And we're a lot more likely to, like, now, I think it's a lot easier to lean into, like, if we're going in, like, a different direction that's not just hauntings, it's really easy to lean into, like, the idea of magic. Yeah. In a lot of stories. Yep. And magic, yes, is sometimes in more of a fantastical setting, like not, a real world situation, but other times in which they do exist in that real world situation, where in a perfectly sort of modern average environment, you just have touches of magic that are coming through, or there are different types of paranormal or supernatural beings that exist within there, whether they're vampires or demons or ghosts or anything, really, like the idea of that, the idea of meshing those elements into like an everyday setting, right, as opposed to just a fantasy setting, is much, much, much more commonplace now than it used to be. Like, if you put yourself in the place of the writer, for example, it's a lot easier to bring an element of the paranormal or supernatural into our world. Yeah, because you write what you know, right? And it's so easy to write your own surroundings. Yeah, world, like, that takes effort, Sarah Moss. Yeah, a lot of there's all of these like fantasy, full, like, high fantasy-ish authors, let's say, who have done these things, created all of these worlds, if you're looking from Tolkien on kind of thing, all these people who have done this, it's very impressive to see the amount that they've really, the amount of time and effort and thought that it's taken to develop this whole fantastical universe that exists around the characters throughout the course of the story, and that exists in a way that you're okay with it as the reader, where you're like, yeah, okay, no, I believe this, I'm in it. Yeah. Like, I believe it. Here it is. This is what, this is the world that I'm reading. This is the world that I'm like immersing myself in. And I'm not there like, okay, this is stupid. This doesn't exist. This isn't real. Like, we know that. We know that it's not real, but it takes a particular caliber of writer to make it so that you don't care, basically.
It's true. Yep.
Whereas, like, don't get me wrong, that's not to discredit anybody who does it in the other way and takes fantasy elements or supernatural and paranormal elements and puts them into our world. Not to discredit that at all. These people are also good writers.
Right, but there's always a spectrum, right?
Yes.
Of things like,
I do think that... I do think to a certain extent that does help an author to be able to do that. And it also helps a reader. Like, it's just an interesting thought. What if this thing that's being spoken about in this story existed in my world? Like, how would I react to that? How would I deal with it,
Yep. I mean, and we've been talking about this for a while. Like, I know that there's, been kind of, there's a little bit of and I don't know if you agree with this, Megan, but I feel like there's been a surge in popularity of all things spooky. In the last, like, few years. And so, like, there's, like, people love, like, Halloween and, like, Halloween decorations. And, like, it's not that we didn't before, but maybe it's as our generation's getting older, like, things that we felt nostalgic about, we're kind of making part of our everyday lives. Like, you and I both have, like, again, Halloween and spooky. We've got, like, rooms dedicated to decor.
Like, slightly spookier. That's it. Slightly like, stuff spookier. And decor.
And so, like, with the spooky and the Halloween and, like, that kind of genre comes, paranormal, supernatural.
Yeah.
And so, again, like, us growing up, we saw a lot of this evolution of these topics,
And when at the time when we were growing up, it was becoming more commonplace.
Like Goosebumps when we were a kid,
Paranormal elements existing in real life situations.
Yeah.
So that's it exactly. Something like Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
Those things like
scary
stories to tell in the dark. Like those things that are like, oh, like this exists in the real world, but it is like, look, there is something that's like, like this is possessed or this is haunted.
Harry
this one
Potter.
Or like a haunted object. No, it's true.
Yeah.
That's it. Like here is this alleged secret half world that exists along with our own world in which people simply use magic, like have the ability to access and use magic on an everyday basis.
It certainly makes, like, I don't know, for me anyway, like it always kind of makes things feel a little bit more whimsical. Like, I say these things half jokingly to my husband sometimes, we'll be driving along somewhere and I'm like, oh, I bet that's like, a hidden doorway into like Hogwarts or something.
Narnia,
whatever. That's another one, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They made all those movies. So, we've been very much exposed in our media to it just in terms of like popularity and like exploration of different stories and like things coming up, like very iconic books being written in our childhood and being published, and then the whole explosion of, media that came from that. It just feels like anything paranormal and supernatural has become ingrained in who we are. I don't know.
And even if you look at a lot of things from like when we were young, there was so much of it. Like there were so many seemingly innocuous book series and stuff like that where they would still have like, you would still have like some paranormal adjacent like element of it that would insert itself. Like there would be like, one spooky Babysitter's Club book,
right,
that would come out, and there would be like something that was haunted, and there would be, like episodes, obviously like specific, like Goosebumps had kind of that everywhere, although some of it was a little bit more like, let's say sci-fi sometimes versus like horror or whatever, like a monster thing, ghost, this, that, the other, whatever you want to, look at there. And like, then you get into the Fear Street of it, which also has a lot of elements like that, again, of just like paranormal happenings. And, in R.L. Stine stuff, that has a lot of the, sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. It's just the people doing it. It depends. It's got like a Scooby-Doo mentality where sometimes it's just people in a mask, not all of them, but in some of them. But then I think like for our generation, who are like, you know, a fairly prominent generation now and are adults now, so many of us are, you know, looking back at these things that we read and consumed when we were kids. And so many of them in so many different genres had an element at some point of like a paranormal or supernatural something or other that was added to the story, because it was like the authors were like, the kids like this, right?
Well, it just kind of became normal.
It did. It was very commonplace.
Like, you kind of expected it. Like, even think about like The Simpsons. Like, they had like Treehouse of Horror, you know, every year at Halloween, and you looked forward to it, you know? And it was always
100%.
something different. So, like, to your point, it just became very much either it was all about that, or they found a way of introducing
stuff. Like I remember, I think the whole thing's like a dream or whatever it is, but there's that Halloween episode. There are Halloween episodes of like Boy Meets World and stuff. There are, you know, all kinds of different things of like creepy additional elements that would be added to things. Or like, you know, you'd have like one totally innocuous episode of like a teen show or like a kid's show that you would watch, and then they would explain away something weird at the end by having like literally having it be like a magical something caused this to happen. And you're like, whoa, what? And you never questioned it at the time, but now I'm like, wait, what?
Hang on a minute.
That's weird. But it's true that we love doing that. Just having those elements exist. And I think that it's weird because it's like, that's our modern, these things now are like magic, like, you know, in the real world, quote unquote now. Those are our versions of like, oh, this 19th century novel is like a real life, you know, like old cricky house that exists, like, you know, and this person goes to investigate it and stuff like that. And oh, there's a ghost and it's this and it's that. And it's weird to think that we have evolved a lot, but we still kind of follow the same like patterns of enjoyment to an extent, where it's like, oh, I've added a ghost, or oh, I've added the addition of werewolves to this story, or the idea that fairies really exist, or this or that, and people are like, oh, okay, I like that. Like, I like that even better, kind of thing, because I've added this additional element to it. We get like
a certain amount of comfort from it, I find, at this point, you know? Like,
a certain amount of comfort and a certain amount of FOMO that we're like, that would be cool.
That'd be cool.
That would be fun.
If I was magic.
Yeah, like imagine if I could do magic, and, you know, then you get into the, like, you know, slightly more like adult fiction that tries to do it in like a bit more of a realistic way. So like your like True Blood stuff, where it's like, imagine if vampires existed and it would not be sunshine and rainbows and how fun all the time. No, they would like kill people, and there would be a lot of like really negative connotations around that. So it's just interesting to think of like, well, what would it be like if this were real? What would it be like if this thing existed in the real world? How would we as a society react to it and acclimate to a world in which that is the case? You know, it's weird. You don't, you know, it's, I guess that's partially what makes paranormal fiction so fun, is that it causes you to like ask yourself the question of like, how would I be in a world in which this was the way that everything functioned? Like, how would I feel if I lived in a world where this existed?
Yeah, they do, like, a lot of elements come in for that exact reason. Like, I mean, anything, we were talking about post-apocalyptic month the other month, you know, like, anything to do with zombies and all that. Like, how would I fare in that situation?
Exactly.
Like, for some people, it's very enjoyable. For me, personally, I've said to my husband many times,
I don't want to think about it.
I'm like, zombie apocalypse breaks out, just shoot me. It's just better for everybody. Trust me. I will whine. I will complain. I will get myself killed.
I'll bog everyone down.
Killed. Like,
I'll bog everyone down. It won't be good. You may as well just kill me when it starts. Yeah, exactly. It's true. I think you're right. I think that we ask ourselves, like, it's the same way, like, how would I acclimate to an apocalyptic event? Well, how would I acclimate to the idea that vampires really exist? How would I acclimate to the idea that
fine with that
magic? I don't know. I'm on the fence about that.
They could exist out there. I just feel like they would keep themselves hidden.
Yeah, probably. especially depending on like the numbers of them that there are. Actually, I could see being like, well, you know, safety in numbers, and there aren't that many of us, but there are way more of you. So I do feel like that would probably be more the way that it was going to go. Or, you know, that's it. How would I acclimate to a world in which that's it, like you know, like people can actually do magic in some way, shape, or form, not just tricks, but
or
like
they
actual...
have like I think like supernatural abilities. Might
Yeah,
be more
that's it. Like
what,
you know, what? How would I acclimate to a world in which that's it? People have like, I don't know, telekinetic abilities of some kind, or are able to communicate via telepathy. Yeah. How would I fare in a situation like that? Would I want an ability like that myself as well? Like, what would that mean for me? You know? Yeah, they're interesting questions to pose, and I think that we will always come back to paranormal fiction in some way, shape, or form, no matter whether we're talking about beings or haunted houses or whatever, because we're always going to be asking ourselves these questions about it.
Yep.
Yeah. But what do you guys think about, you know, paranormal fiction in general? Do you prefer the classics? Are you more of someone who likes like a modern interpretation of things? You know, how do you feel about all of those different elements that have been added to them now? And what do you think, I guess, falls into the realm of paranormal fiction? Because I'm sure everyone has different ideas about that as well. You can let us know about that over on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at fullybookedca. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next month, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.